Welcome to the NZ Travel Show, an interactive show where you can ask your NZ travel questions to the experts behind nzpocketguide.com, New Zealand's largest travel guide. The NZ Travel Show will start in exactly 2 minutes. Just the time for you to hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and subscribe if you have not done so yet. nzpocketguide.com has over 3,000 articles covering all aspects of travelling in New Zealand, from a working holiday gap year to tips for a perfect family holiday. The site also features dozens of pre-made itineraries that you can use to plan your ideal trip in New Zealand. It's all available for free at nzpocketguide.com, so check it out. The NZ Travel Show is hosted by Robin, the Operations Manager of South Pacific Pocket Guide, the company behind nzpocketguide.com. The New Zealand Travel Show is also hosted by Laura, a journalist and editor-in-chief of South Pacific Pocket Guide and all its publications, including nzpocketguide.com. We're exactly 1 minute away from the NZ Travel Show. Get yourself comfortable and start asking your NZ travel questions in the chat. Robin and Laura will go over them when the show starts. In 30 seconds, our experts will be live from New Zealand to give you all the practical New Zealand travel tips you need, from the best transport options to the best accommodations and activities to choose for the perfect New Zealand holiday. Live from New Zealand, this is the NZ Travel Show with your travel experts, Robin and Laura.
Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, the 28th of January 2024. I don't think I've done a mistake so far this year. And this is the NZ Travel Show. Welcome on board. Show with a
There's
full
your
show.
mistake.
Yeah, here you go.
Dang it.
All right, so the way this travel show works is you can ask us all your questions about traveling in New Zealand, all of them, and we're here to answer them for you. But we also have a theme of the week, and we also have something new happening. From now on and for the foreseeable future, you are not just going to see our talky little faces during the travel show. You will see, some videos of us traveling in New Zealand, some awesome stuff to look at. And so let's get started with today a video that kind of matches the theme. All right, what do we have? What is Rob saying?
Rob Wilson is here saying, flew on a propeller plane from Tauranga to Christchurch on Air New Zealand. Found it strange there was no security at the Tauranga airport. First time on a big propeller plane. So it was fun, but a loud trip.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the difference between propeller planes compared to jet planes.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point for our theme of the week, Rob. So yeah, obviously that's not really part of anything that we mentioned, but we should actually. There is way less security when you fly internally, right? So it's the same like if you're flying within Australia, if you don't leave the country and stay in the same country, you don't even need a passport to take the plane, which is also a very different kind of feeling, right? I remember the first time I ever took a domestic flight that was not in New Zealand, but the first time I ever took a domestic flight, and the fact that I did not need a passport was just odd. That was just a weird feeling, isn't it? All right. Well, anyway, Rob is kind of pointing us to our theme of the week, so we may as well kind of introduce it right now. So as we watch us in a small, very, very small plane, which is not a domestic flight in New Zealand, by the way. This is air safari above Lake Tekapo, so it's more of a scenic flight, and we'll cover that later. So as we're watching that, we're going to be talking about domestic flights in New Zealand. Despite being a very small country, New Zealand boasts 25 different different destinations with an airport in the whole country. And there are many different domestic airlines. You'll be surprised by how many there is. So today we thought we'd do a bit of a rundown of everything you need to know about traveling on domestic flight in New Zealand from the questions we received the most here at NZ Pocket Guide. We received hundreds of questions. About flying in New Zealand, to the different airlines you can use, tips to get cheaper tickets, as well as just some tips for you to kind of be a pro at taking domestic flights in New Zealand. So without further ado, let's get started. But first, let's say hi to Anthony.
Anthony is here saying, Morena from Rodeo, California. Morena, Anthony, hope you are doing very well today. Robin, what does Morena mean?
Morena means good morning in Maori, the local indigenous language here in New Zealand.
Excellent.
Okay, so let's get started with the New Zealand's largest airport. So Laura, what are the five largest airports in the country?
5 big ones. Obviously, the first one has to be Auckland. This is the main international airport of New Zealand, and it also is the main domestic sort of flight hub as well. Next, we have
the airport code is AKL,
and the airport code is AKL. Next up, we have Wellington, whose airport code is WLG, located in the capital of New Zealand. Next up, we have Christchurch, whose airport code is CHC. Then next on the list...
Christchurch has to be the largest airport on the South Island, right?
It is the largest airport on the South Island. And then after that, on the South Island, you will find the second largest airport is Queenstown with the code ZQN. They have that is also an international airport as well as Christchurch. And then we have Hamilton, located on the North Island. The airport code is HLZ. And then finally, on the South Island, if you're wanting to, hop between the South Island and the North Island, a lot of people head to the Nelson Airport, and the code for that is NSN.
Yeah, so those are the 5 largest airports in New Zealand. Obviously, there are much more than that. As I mentioned, there are 25 destinations around the country, but they are the likeliest airport you may just frequent, even if it's just within New Zealand or also internationally. All right, before we move on to the next section, a quick reminder to everybody. So as we watch us about to take off right here, you can ask us all your questions about traveling in New Zealand, even if it has nothing to do with the theme of this week. We are here to help you plan a fantastic trip to New Zealand and make sure that you have the time of your life when you do so. So just do ask. I think we're placing ourselves right now on the plane. That lady is bored. That lady's very bored. It's kind of
where's the mountains? I want to see the mountains already.
So as a quick reminder, what we're watching right here is us taking a scenic flight.
Starting from Lake Tekapo, flying over into the Mount Cook National Park.
All right, so let's get started with some frequently asked questions. So here are the questions that we receive the most when we are answering people's emails or Facebook messages or anything like that, right? So Laura is going to go over the question and I'll give you the quick answer as we're about to take off.
Okay, let's start with the first question, which is, what is the typical baggage allowance for domestic flights in New Zealand?
So your baggage allowance will vary different depending on your airlines, right? But typically you can expect your carry-on allowance to be one piece between 5 to 7 kgs, which in pound is a different number that you Freedom Unit users will have to research. I'm sorry, I didn't do that research on this one. But you also will be allowed one personal item on most flights. So that personal item would be like a laptop or just your purse. Yeah. Your check baggage usually will incur an additional fee, so you have to pay extra for it. And it's always best to check with your airline for the specific weight for that, because that changes a lot depending on the size of the plane you're going to be boarding on.
All right, next question. How early should you arrive at the airport for domestic flights?
So for domestic flight, you have a little bit more leeway than you have with international flights. So, we recommend about an hour before your scheduled departure. If you need to check some baggage, or if you're traveling during the peak times, we're talking about the public school holiday, public holidays, Christmas time and everything, give yourself a little bit of extra time.
Next question. Can I check in online for my domestic flight in New Zealand?
Yes, you can. With most airline, you'll be able to do online check-in. It usually opens about 24 hours prior to your flight, and it usually closes 2 hours before your departure. It's a very easy way to save a lot of time.
Are there any restrictions on flying with pets domestically in New
Yeah, so
Zealand?
believe it or not, a lot of people are asking us about pets, which is kind of interesting. The restrictions for traveling with pets in New Zealand. Usually on domestic flights, you're kind of fine, right? Your pet is either going to travel in the cabin or in the cargo hold, depending on the size of the pet and the airline policy. But you do need to make advance arrangements, and there will be extra fees, and they're not cheap. So check with your airline for the specific pet travel requirements, if you need to do so.
All right. What forms of identification do I need for a domestic travel in New Zealand?
So you will need a valid photo ID to travel domestically in New Zealand, but that doesn't have to be a passport. So it can be your driver license, your passport, or any government-issued ID. If you're traveling with children or infants, the parent or guardian will also need to carry a proof of age. But we'll talk a little bit more about kids soon.
What should I do if my flight is cancelled or delayed?
All right, so if your flight is cancelled or delayed in New Zealand, the airline will typically just rebook you in the next available flight. If you book through a travel agent or through a third-party website, you will need to contact and to go through those guys as well, which is a bit of a pain. You can stay updated with all those airline and delays and everything within the same airline app. However, bear in mind that it's quite rare that you will get a full monetary refunds for cancelled or delayed flights. That doesn't often happen in New Zealand.
Yeah, you usually have to pay for a special ticket in order to do that.
No, not even that.
Not even that.
No.
Oh.
That's not what we talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I bring liquids on?
Sorry, just making it clear, right? If you cancel yourself, then you get some refund. If the airline cancel it, that's a different policy.
Okay. Can I bring liquids in my carry-on for domestic flights?
Yes. So generally, there's no restrictions on liquids and for carry-ons in domestic flights in New Zealand. But you can check on your airline's website just in case.
Are there any special considerations for travelling with children on domestic flights?
Yes, so if you're traveling with kids in New Zealand on the domestic flight, bear in mind that most of the airlines will have no entertainments for kids, right? So you do need to have snacks, entertainment, comfort items, all these kind of things. Otherwise, well, you're going to have a flight between, like, let's say, Auckland to Queenstown, which is about
1 hour and 55 minutes.
Okay, so around 2 hours, right? And you're going to have literally nothing to do with them, right? So make sure that you're prepared with that. Most airlines will kind of be accommodating and kind of help you with like family seatings and all those kind of things. But if you do need any assistance, make sure that you do tell the airline early on.
Yes. Is Wi-Fi available on domestic flights?
Some domestic flight may offer Wi-Fi, but it really depends on the type of aircraft and your airline. So you may want to check with the airline for availability and cost. But like look at the windows; it's beautiful. Just do that instead.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's usually Scenic Flight, even on domestic flights in New Zealand. Okay.
Don't rely on Wi-Fi, basically.
Final question. How do I find the best deals on domestic flights in New Zealand?
All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about how to get a good deal later on this video. But usually you want to book quite early for your flight, actually earlier than even your international flight. You want to be flexible on the travel dates, right? Don't try to fly on the Friday evening and fly back on the Sunday evening. It's usually when you're gonna spend the most money, right? Don't be that strict on your date. And there is some special offers on some websites, like Grab a Seat, which is owned by Air New Zealand. So that's kind of a good way to get that. But we'll have some more tips in there. So just a last note quickly, that's like those questions are the questions that we receive the most often, and so we just wanted to kind of like highlight those one just right from the beginning in this video. But there is comprehensive guidelines on every single one of the New Zealand's airline websites, and you may want to refer to those because what I gave you right here were just mostly general rules. All right. Next up, we will talk about all the different airports that we suggest you fly between. Let's go back to the live chat as I drink a bit of water. What's the people saying?
Well, not much. There's no one new on the live chat, But you can ask your questions, anything to do with traveling in New Zealand. That's what we're here for, even though we do have a theme of the week. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to talk all about that theme. You guys can ask any of your questions to do with traveling in New Zealand.
Do you think you took enough photo, by the way, on that flight? I could see.
No,
that you were
I
like,
don't think I took enough.
it looks like I'm helping and taking some extra photos as well. So yeah. Oh, that was a fun flight though. So this flight leaves from Tekapo, takes you all the way to Mount Cook and flies back. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a fun scenic flight. That takes about an hour and a half, something like that, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's a good amount of time. Like
Yeah.
it is like it's a longer flight than, for instance, if you were to take one of the scenic flights directly from Mount Cook Village. They're usually much shorter. So if you take this flight from Lake Tekapo, you get, I guess, a more comprehensive experience, something more complete, because you get both the Mount Cook scenery and Lake Tekapo scenery on the way back. So yeah, you get a bit more going on the Lake Tekapo flight with Air Safaris.
All right. Okay. So while you guys continue asking our question, or continue not asking us your question and completely ignoring us, we'll continue talking about domestic flights in New Zealand. So Laura, tell us a little bit about the main routes of traveling around New Zealand in domestic flights.
So despite there being 25 domestic airports in New Zealand, it's not necessarily always the best thing to, use them all, travel between them all. There are some main airports which will make at least your airfares cheaper. They usually have more connections going on. So if you do decide to take a domestic flight in New Zealand, usually there are some better airports to go to than others. So those airports, first of all, include Auckland Airport. So this is the largest airport in New Zealand and is where most domestic connections are made. You will find, therefore, that the prices to fly to Auckland Airport or from Auckland Airport are significantly cheaper compared to flying from some of those smaller airports. For instance, I'm thinking of other airports that would be nearby, like say Rotorua or Taupo, or Whangarei. Those airports would be much more expensive than flying from Auckland. So yeah.
And it's also used as a hub. So for example, let's say you want to fly from Taupo, going all the way to Queenstown, for example, you will have to fly from Taupo to Auckland and then from Auckland to Queenstown, making the journey more expensive and also significantly longer.
Yes. Another airport that is a really good hub for domestic flights is Wellington. So you will find there's quite a few flights going from Wellington, even over to the Chatham Islands, which is one of the offshore islands of.
Cool.
That's where they depart from. So yeah, Wellington is usually another good hub for some slightly cheaper domestic flights in New Zealand. On the South Island, Christchurch would be your main hub for domestic flights. If you were to fly between the North Island and the South Island, you will find that they tend to be cheaper if you're flying, for instance, between Auckland and Christchurch or Wellington and Christchurch. And then finally on the list of, more handy sort of airports than the rest is the Queenstown Airport. So there is quite a lot of regular flights domestically going to Queenstown. So yeah, that tends to offer slightly cheaper airfares compared to going to other very small airports on the South Island.
All right. Next up, we'll talk about the different airlines that you have in New Zealand. All right, going back to live chat. Wow, you guys are quiet today. You know, YouTube is not showing our videos to anyone if you guys keep on not saying anything, right? YouTube is looking at engagement for some reason. So yeah, continue talking to us if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll continue talking about airlines. Once Laura has had a drink. I cannot see through the window where we are right now, but that lady is very excited about taking photos. Yeah.
Well, you would be.
Yeah.
I see the odd green patch. Oh, and I think there's like a bit of a glacier melt or something.
I think we're about to arrive in around the Mount Cook area. Okay. All right. So as we continue making our way around the Mount Cook area in that plane, this is a scenic flight again. This is not what a domestic flight would look like in New Zealand. Let's talk about the main domestic airlines in New Zealand. So Laura, Go ahead. What are the main two domestic airlines in the country?
Okay, so the two main domestic airlines, the ones that you'll see most frequently, are Jetstar and, of course, Air New Zealand. So which one is the best? Well, that kind of depends. There's not really one that's better than the other. The only difference between the two really is that on Air New Zealand flights you'll get a plastic wrapped cookie and a glass or a cup of water. So that's the only difference. I don't know if that's really what you should base your decision on which airline to choose. So what we usually suggest to people is to basically just compare the prices for the flight that you want to take on the day and go with whichever airline has the best price. One thing to note with Jetstar is that there's a lot of sort of added prices once you go through their booking system. You know, you have to pay a little bit extra for this seat, or a little bit extra for these. There's a little bit more hidden fees as you go through the booking process, but generally Jetstar are considered the more budget airline. But yeah, like I say, just go with whichever one has the best fares for your flight.
So here are some tips if you want to get a good deal on domestic fare in New Zealand. So first up, what I usually do is that I go on any of those Meta flight search engines, like those Sky Scanner or whatever. Like I don't have any other one in mind right now, but they're all none of them is paying us.
Webjet.
Yeah, is that what? Yeah, probably is one of them. Although I had bad experience with Webjet, so I do not recommend Webjet. But yeah, anyway, so you go on one of those and you check which one will be the cheapest route and which one will be the cheapest airline. Then you go to that said airline's website, so directly like on the jetstar.com or the airnewzealand.com or anything, and then you start comparing prices from there, because it actually can get cheaper directly on the airline. Also, Air New Zealand owns a website called Grab a Seat, which is always like where they dump like all their fares that are a bit cheaper. So that's kind of a good idea to check that out. Right. Anthony says, I wish I was as calm as that lady. That lady is Laura, right? Just so it's clear. And he's also
He probably means the lady sat with the blue...
with the blue jacket. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're quite posed as well doing your job, taking photos, kind of nice. And he also says lots of windows on that plane. Great views. Yeah,
that's the great thing about that flight with Air Safaris, is that they have really wide windows, and also they bubble out, so you have room between your face and your camera. So they actually, they're not flat windows. They
Laura
sort of
can use
stick
the
out
full zoom.
They stick out a little bit, so that's quite cool as well.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's continue about the airlines in New Zealand. So there are also some other domestic airlines in the country, right?
Yes, so it's not just Jetstar and Air New Zealand. There are some smaller domestic airlines that are servicing some of the smaller airports. So, for instance, there is on the North Island, there's Sun Air, which services Gisborne, the Great Barrier Island, Tauranga, Whangarei, Whitianga, Ardmore, Napier and Wairoa. There's also Barrier Air, which is just going back and forth between Auckland and Great Barrier Island. On the South Island, so domestic airlines that only service the South Island would be Stewart Island Flights. They do flights between Invercargill and Stewart Island, and they also do Scenic Flights around Stewart Island as well. And then finally, some airlines that service both the North Island and the South Island. We have Air Chathams, so they go between Auckland, Christchurch, Wellington, Whakatane, Whanganui, Chatham Islands and Pitt Islands. There's also Golden Bay Air, which goes between Wellington, Takaka, Karamea and Nelson. There's also Origin Air, which goes between Nelson, New Plymouth and Palmerston North. And finally, there is Sounds Air, which goes to Nelson, Kaikoura, Blenheim, Christchurch, Napier, Paraparaumu, Picton, Taupo, Wellington and Westport.
So you do have plenty of options. Just keep in mind though that a lot of those smaller airlines are operating significantly smaller planes. Some of them actually are operating planes as small as this Scenic Flight right here. and so therefore the prices are a little bit higher. But there are serving lines or routes that are very specific. So if you really do need that specific flight, well, here are the options.
And you'll also find that those airlines don't usually pop up on those sort of Skyscanner websites. So now that you know, and you can always refer back to this article, but when you know the names,
link in the description.
Yep, link in the description. But when you know the names and which cities or towns or islands that they're serving, then it's good to just go directly on their website, have a quick check of what their prices are directly, because that's another way to, you know, compare prices and possibly get something cheaper than with Air New Zealand or Jetstar.
Indeed. All right, so let's continue and talk about the checklist that you need to go through when taking a domestic flight in New Zealand. So here's the few things that you need to prepare beforehand before taking a flight in New Zealand.
Yeah, so first of all, make sure that your carry-on and checked-in baggage meets the weight and size allowance. This is usually a little bit smaller than international flights, so do double check that. Also, bring your ticket and booking reference. Although you can do online check-in for some domestic flights in New Zealand, it's always a good idea to have that handy backup of at least your booking reference, if not your ticket, if you have a printed out e-ticket. Also, if you have carry-on baggage, checking in online means that if you only have carry-on baggage, then checking in online means that you can skip the whole checking in sort of stage and just go straight to the gate.
Checking in.
Yeah, sorry, that got a little bit ahead of me there. So yeah, basically, let me start that again. Shall I start that again? Is that clear? Has that been clear?
In short, if you not carrying with any checked luggages, and you check in online, that means you can literally walk straight to the gate without having to talk to anyone. So if you want to save heaps of time, that's the option for you.
Absolutely. Well said. Next up, remember to bring some sort of valid ID. It doesn't have to be your passport for domestic flights, but usually for international travellers, that tends to be the ID that is valid in New Zealand. So it's just usually the best option to go with, or the easiest option to go with. But yeah, it's not. You don't necessarily have to use your passport, but it's probably easier if you do. And then finally, arrive at the airport 1 hour before departure.
Indeed. Again, we have a full articles in the description of this video, so that's going to be very helpful for you guys if you want to have all this information that we're giving you right here in writing, just so you can refer to it.
Yes.
Okay, so Rob Wilson says weight distribution on those small planes is super important, and that's in response to Adrian that says, so small, the tour company asked me for my weight. Yeah, that's very true. They actually ask that in a lot of small airplanes, but even some larger one. When we travel a lot in the South Pacific, so our last trip in Tonga, right, we're taking a plane which was the Otter. How many seats do you think it was in that?
15.
Yeah, so a 15-seater, right? And we still ask for our weight in order to do the weight distribution of everything within the plane, right? So yeah, it's really critical for them. So on that specific kind of Air Safari plane, I think you can be 6 people. So I think there's 2 seats behind us. Is that correct? Like behind the camera.
Yes.
So I think we're like, you have 6 passengers and 2 pilots, so we're 8 in total. So yeah, it's super important, right? If you have somebody which is heavier, if you put like 3 heavier people on one side, then the plane's going to be flying like lopsided for the whole time, right? So yeah, no, it's quite important.
I actually think that plane was only 5 passengers and 1 pilot.
No, there's somebody behind this lady.
Is there?
Yeah, there is. Because at some point they knocked the camera and also she kept talking to them.
Oh, okay, cool.
So yeah, no, I know there's somebody behind.
Yeah, because I remember the guy sat in front of me was a passenger as well, who sat next to the guy with the headphones on. Yeah.
I actually assume he was a co-pilot because he has headphones.
On. Yeah, but he was, because I have some photos of him taking photos and with his phone and stuff. So I remember he was the lucky guy to sit at the front. I want that scene.
That sounds fun. Rob says, I was a sad panda when our flight from Milford Sound to Queenstown was cancelled due to foggy weather. I hope to do that next visit. Oh yeah, that's so you did do the classic drive down and then fly back up, and that was cancelled. Oh, that's a bit That's a bit sad. To be quite honest, that probably means that you had a wonderful time in Milford Sound, because I personally prefer Milford Sound under like rainy, foggy weather, because it gives you this mystical kind of, woo, feel. So yeah, so I technically prefer Milford Sound under the rain. So that
But
probably
not-
means you had a blast.
Yeah, but not on a flight.
No,
but yeah,
not on a flight.
if you do the bus and the
Yeah.
and going on the
Also,
ship.
when are you coming back to New Zealand, Rob? Oh, and also that reminds me, we have a new Patreon subscriber. Her name is Kathy, so we want to say welcome to Kathy.
Yeah, welcome.
Kathy will be joining us during our call today, so that's gonna be fun. So we do weekly group calls for Patreons, as well as a lot of other extra perks. So yeah, if you guys want to check that out, there is a link in the description below. All right. Well, after Laura's drunk. Not so smooth transition. All right, so let's move on to Scenic Flight in New Zealand. So what you are looking at right here on screen is us taking a scenic flight above Lake Tekapo and the beautiful Mount Cook area. This is why Laura and I are taking so many photos and filming all that good stuff. So there is obviously plenty of scenic flights in New Zealand, which usually operates from much smaller planes than a domestic flight, right? So they're not to be confused.
Yes, so yeah, definitely if you're taking a scenic flight in New Zealand, a good 90% of the time you will be returning to the airport that you left. So this is by no means a mode of transport. It is an experience, just like a nice scenic activity. They are mostly based in areas where, obviously there's beautiful mountain scenery to be had. So, for instance, Franz Josef, the Fox Glacier, Aoraki Mount Cook National Park, even going over White Island in the Bay of Plenty, Milford Sound, Lake Tekapo, which is the video on screen, and the list goes on. There really is a lot of scenic flights happening in New Zealand, not just fixed wing flights, but also helicopter flights as well.
And a couple that are scenic flight that could be taken as transportation will be the one where in Milford Sound, where you can take the bus down and enjoy the road down there and then fly back out and being able to enjoy the scenery, which is what Rob in the live chat was talking about. And also the flight to Stewart Island is so stunning, right?
Oh yes, so that would be another option,
Yeah, it's really, really amazing. All right. Rob says, probably in October 2025, I have to get my son off to college, so it will be just the wife and I. That's a good reason to kick your son out. I mean, to take a holiday to New Zealand, that's valid. I like that. I like that a lot. Well, Rob, if you want help to plan your trip, join us on Patreon. It's a lot of fun. We hang out even more. Adrian says we are hoping to take the
40-minute flight
back to Queenstown from Milford Sound when we finish the tour of that area. There are many things I will have to come back to see in New Zealand. Interesting, yeah. So it looks like you want to do the same thing that Rob is doing. So yeah, the good thing is that you always have that backup to be able to take the bus back. So yeah, so it's going to be awesome. It's really stunning.
Yeah.
Make sure you take a lot of photos and you share it with us on the Patreon Facebook group, Adrian. Since you're there, may as well, right?
May as well.
All right. Should we kick off? Yes.
Yeah.
Shall we kick off the next stage of that?
Absolutely.
All right,
Let's do
Laura,
it.
what are we doing next?
Okay, so now we're going to give you a few travel tips or hacks for taking a domestic flight in New Zealand. So we're going to go through a few tips and give a few little extra tips and tips galore. Okay, let's start with...
You introducing that, I do the rest.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so first off, first tip is timing is everything.
All right, so first thing first. In New Zealand, we have noticed that domestic flights are significantly cheaper the earlier you book them, right? So in short, early birds get the deal. So book your flight at least 2 months in advance and you will be able to incur significant savings. And obviously keep an eye out for airline sales, which often occur during off-peak travel seasons.
So also another tip concerning timing is to be flexible with your travel dates. So a handy thing when you're doing booking with domestic flights is that you can often see, what the fares are going to be like throughout the week. And as you may not be surprised by, there are more expensive flights generally around the weekend, and then midweek tends to be your cheaper flights. So if you're flexible with your dates, then generally you can find cheaper flights that way. Next up, we have next tip concerning navigating airports like a pro.
So we already hint at that quite early on in the video, but to avoid any queues of checking in, do the check-in online. On most airlines in New Zealand will allow you to do that. The check-in usually opens 24 hours before the flight and closes 2 hours beforehand. But some of them will also allow you to select your seats, and some of them actually don't charge for selecting your seat. Not Air New Zealand. Air New Zealand does charge, and Jetstar as well. They definitely do charge.
Yeah.
But some of them don't. So, if you're on a window seat, make sure you enjoy the view. Do that.
Yeah, another way that you can save time and money is to travel light. So there are, whenever you want to have check-in luggage on a domestic flight, there is an extra charge for that. If you just go in with a carry-on, with your carry-on baggage and your small items, then you can usually just bypass the whole check-in area if you've checked in online and go straight to the gate. So that just makes it like a super easy process. And yeah, saves you a lot of time.
All right, and lastly, check out your airport map before you're heading there. Some of the small airports have really weird layouts, and I'm not joking. Sometimes you are checking in one building and then you have to walk out and go elsewhere to like kind of board and everything. So if you're a little bit like kind of a stressed traveler and you like to know what to expect, do that. Just make sure you check out what the airport will look like. Just head on their website and you'll be able to find that really easily.
All right, we have a few tips for smooth sailing with children and special needs.
Okay, so prior to your flight, you want to prepare yourself a little bit. So you want to inform the airline to say that you're traveling with young children or that you have any special requirements. The airlines in New Zealand are usually accommodating, but you want to tell them ahead so they can plan ahead for your, choosing the best seat for you or having somebody that will help for priority access, priority boarding and all that.
Also, a good way to keep everybody happy for flights, domestic flights in New Zealand, is to provide some entertainment and comfort. There is no in-flight entertainment in domestic flights in New Zealand, so just making sure that you can pack a few snacks, games, just that sort of thing. Just be prepared for the time that you're going to be spent on the flight or waiting for your flight. There's going to be some downtime. It's going to get boring, especially when traveling with children. So just prepare some fun for that.
And finally, so most airports have facilities for families, but they are always hidden in the darkest of tiniest of all corners somewhere. So when you're checking in, ask them if there is a changing room, ask them if there is a play area, or ask the person in front of you, and so they'll be able to point you out to there. So like that, when you really do need to go do the changing of the diaper or anything like that, you don't have to look all around with a turd filled baby. You know already where to go.
Great tip, Robin. Next tip is staying connected.
All right, so Jetstar and Air New Zealand, both of them have an app. So if you're on real-time update on your flight status, download the app.
Next up, lounge access for extra comfort.
Yeah, so some people are really into like the lounge access, so we kind of decide to put it on there, right? But look if you think it's worth it for you, or if you think that the free muffin is worth like the extra $40 membership or something like that. But yeah, just you sometimes have it complimentary with your credit card, so that's kind of like when it's kind of worth it. But yeah, consider lounge access. Sorry, I'm not a big
lounge access fan.
No, I've done it many times, and it's kind of like every time I'm kind of like, yeah, not worth it. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, well, how about we move on to the next tip, which is be weather-wise.
Okay, so in most time, when you're going to be traveling in domestic flights in New Zealand, you will board straight from the tarmac. So you won't have like this big, I don't know the name of that stuff. If any of you guys in the live chat knows.
Jet tunnel. I did learn it the other day.
Is it jet tunnel?
It's something like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like jet bridge or something like that.
Okay, so most domestic airport in New Zealand don't have that big jet bridge that would connect straight to the plane, and you're always kind of element proofed, right? You will land straight from the tarmac. You will land right on the ground.
Rain or shine.
Exactly. They're going to open the door. They're going to put some stairs in there.
Kick you out.
Exactly. Somebody's going to put on a big gumboot and kick you out of the plane. No, but yeah, in short, you're going to land literally within the elements, right? And in New Zealand, it does rain a lot, right? The weather is ever changing. So dressing up in layers, having like your rain jacket at the ready, may be a good idea. Because also, even if you fly, the example I was taking was from Taupo to Auckland, right? It's a very short flight, right? It's well under an hour. I'd say it's about 35-minute flight. I'm not 100% sure, but you would say it's about correct?
Yeah, maybe 45 or something like that, but yeah.
But even just within that flight, the weather can be so different from where you arrive, right? So just to be aware of that, and keep that in mind.
If you've seen any of our weather videos, you see that the climate across the country can be very different. Okay, final tip. Give us a sustainability tip, Robin.
All right, so there is a lot of carbon offset program. Some of them are available straight when you book your flights. They have some sort of ratings, or you have some independent ones, which usually have much more of an emphasis into actually real actions for carbon offsetting. So do consider those, such as like planting coral or planting trees to offset the carbon footprint of your flight, because this is the most carbon heavy modes of transportation in the world. All right, so that wraps up our coverage of domestic flights in New Zealand. So if you want more information, there is a link in the description below. If you want our personal help to plan your trip to New Zealand, there is a link to our Patreon page below, which is really cheap and a great way to have some assistance during your trip in New Zealand. And if you find this video useful, click all the buttons that YouTube wants you to click. And we'll see you in the next one. But before that, we're going back to the live chat.
Yeah.
All right, so David is giving us a bit of a story.
Yeah, he says, when I went to New Zealand last year, I took a lot of domestic flights. Most were on the Air New Zealand domestic multi-stop itinerary, which is booked together with an international flight. The multi-stop was much cheaper than booking flights separately, on some legs cheaper than buses would have been. And it also came with allowance for free checked bag on each flight. And for Rob, the flight from Milford to Queenstown is well worth it.
Nice. So yeah, David, that was was it a year or 2 years ago that you did your trip to New Zealand? Because yes, the price of flights went up a little bit more now, so I don't know how the comparison will be now between buses and flights, but I'm not sure you're gonna get this kind of amazing deal anymore. But yeah, post us a couple of photos of the flight of Milford Sound on the Patreon group, my friends. I know you're there, so yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I'd love to see some of the shots as well. Rob says, I have a travel card that gives you lounge access. Nice. Well, you see, that's kind of when it's worth it, when you don't pay for it. I mean, I guess you pay for it through your card. But
I mean, if you have a credit card or a travel card, that just always check, like, okay, do I have, like, say, the Koru Lounge, which is the Air New Zealand lounge, is that included, or is there any other lounges included? Just always check that.
Is that okay to say that the Koru Lounge food last time we went to the Auckland airport was probably one of the worst food we've ever had?
Yeah, it wasn't great at the Auckland airport. I know at the Queenstown airport it's a lot nicer, but
Well, she says that because she used to work and making the food at the Queenstown airport.
We used to get all the leftover muffins from there because where we worked for like a food company that was serving the airlines and the Koru Lounge and stuff. But yeah, we used to get all the muffins afterwards. But yeah,
it looks like we're about to crash, by the way. So,
it's really like they got to lean on that video.
The lady just knocked the camera.
Yeah, so there are lounges. They're not all that great at all the airports, but
Yeah. So what basically our latest experience in the Koru Lounge in Auckland Airport, right? Is that so we went in the lounge and it was so busy and the food was so poor.
There was more people in the lounge than actually outside.
Yeah, we actually had to wait. We had to queue to get a seat. While in the main area, where the poppers were, there was literally like plenty of seats, and it was like wide, and I could have bought myself a burger for $20 now and be done with it.
Yeah.
That would have been way better.
And you would have had more space. It would have been quieter. You can watch the planes go in and out, whereas the Koru Lounge at the Auckland airport is very enclosed. Yeah, so... Just our opinion about the Auckland Airport Koru Lounge.
Needless to say that on the following flights we did not get the lounge access, and we're very happy to not.
Yes.
But yeah, just our personal experience on that. Adrian is just laughing at, I don't know what I said, but probably something silly I said. Machu Aek says Morena, which means good morning in the Maori language.
Welcome once again.
Yeah. Fare waka waka, is that how you say plane in Maori?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, was I correct, Machu X?
Yeah. Let us know.
Or Fare waka, maybe. Not waka waka, just Fare waka.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, Fare waka, I think.
Okay.
Is that like house in the sky? Or no, houseboat in the sky?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, how do you say plane in Maori, Machu X? I just seem to remember it from one of the Air New Zealand safety videos. So it just came to my mind. Maybe I said something very silly, which, could be the case, guys. I barely speak Rererangi. Okay, cool.
Okay.
So what is Farawaka? I'm going to Google it.
They kind of say, on our Farawaka, but maybe they mean like, I don't know.
Well, maybe we're just making ourselves very, very silly. It means...
Eye of the fish. Does it?
Farawaka means eye of the fish.
No. That's eyeofthefish.org. We're getting very mixed results here from our Google
Wow,
search.
Google, you're very dumb right here. Cool. So that doesn't help. Anyway, maybe we said something very stupid. Well, that's not that. Okay, so Rererangi. Okay, I remember that word. Look at that. Learn a word a day. Always happy. Cool. So who else is taking a domestic flight in New Zealand right here? Anyone has any questions? So again, if you have any questions about traveling in New Zealand, we're here to help. We're here for you guys for another about 15 minutes. But if you guys don't have any questions, we'll just wrap that up and jump onto our Patreon call. So what we do with our Patreon subscribers is that we do a group call every week where we spend an hour kind of answering questions, just all chatty together. This allows us to be much more candid than what we usually do, as we, not in public and not recorded, which is always nice. And we also have access to a Facebook group where it's just us and our Patreon members, which is a lot of fun as well, where you can ask us all your questions. We shared some tips and stuff. Actually, this week, we were showing how to attract fantails in New Zealand.
Yes.
We're sharing a bit of a video of us attracting fantails during a bit of a walk, and it's very silly, but it works, doesn't it?
That fantail was having a whale of a time.
Yes.
I just thought we were the weirdest things it'd ever seen, but that's more the case, I think.
Well, just, okay. Very judgy fantail. Now I resent all my, that fantail is cute comments. Thank you very much.
We ogle at animals all the time. Animals can ogle at us too.
Indeed.
That is fine.
So I don't know if we have a lean right now, but I think we're taking a massive turn right here. It looks like we're taking...
It's a never-ending turn. We've been on that lean for quite a while.
No, the lean is because the lady knocked it in.
Oh,
yes.
right.
Again, it's just like we're turning with the plane. At some point, I will readjust it. But yeah. Also, I'd love to hear from everybody if you prefer when we actually just have something in the background when we talk, or if you prefer that we have our own kind of... just background and basically
just that usual thing.
Yeah, so we want to know if that's the thing that works. I just noticed that some people are watching it more, or maybe it's just depending on the theme. So yeah, cool. Anyone has any questions about traveling in New Zealand? You guys are all so quiet today. I don't know what's going on. So yeah, Laura,
Robin,
would you prefer traveling by flight in New Zealand or traveling by road?
Definitely by road. I feel like you miss a lot of the country when you are just relying on flights. I would strongly recommend to anyone coming to New Zealand to only come to New Zealand when you have the time to experience the country. New Zealand's really not a good country to try and rush through, and therefore a lot of people do find themselves taking a lot of flights in order to try to get around as much as possible. But although the flights are beautiful and scenic, I think the amount of stuff that you see from the road as well is also very beautiful and scenic, and comes with the added bonus of being able to hop out and get close to that waterfall, or go see all those go on very short walks which will take you to beautiful sights and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely recommend anybody coming to New Zealand to try to base their travels mostly by road, and maybe the odd domestic flight if you find yourself ending your trip at the bottom of the South Island and getting a flight back up to Auckland would probably make more sense at that point. But otherwise, just relying solely on flights to get around is nowhere near as fun as travelling by road.
Indeed. Mark D is asking, how early do you have to be at the airport for domestic flight? He looks like he just jumped in because we answered that before. But in short, you have to be there about an hour before your flight, so you have much more flexibility than you usually have with the main, with an international flight. You can save yourself some time by checking in online. If you do check in online. That trips the both of us today. You have much more flexibility if you check in online, as you know, you can literally pretty much walk straight to the gate. So here you go. But yeah, rewind the video. We went through all that and all the things that you need to have prepared before your domestic flight and all that just a little earlier on.
Yeah.
Adrian says, well, this is good to prepare me for the small plane. I like the background videos. Nice. Yeah, so it's just gonna... So again, this is not necessarily the domestic flight, but that's actually a little... It's probably the size of your Milford Sound plane.
Yeah, you do take small planes.
Yeah, I'm actually almost thinking that Milford Sound plane may be a little smaller, like on the overhead stuff, but I can't recall just 100%. Anthony says his catchphrase, stay safe, but I'm here until the end. He hasn't stopped saying that since COVID.
It's been a few
dedication.
years.
I love it.
I love it, yeah.
Actually, I wonder if there's a way to check what's Anthony's earliest comments. There's probably a way to check that on the YouTube studio stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then finally, Mature X is confirming that Riri Rangi means plane in the Maori language. That's cool. So yeah, we did. This is our video about domestic Riri Rangi.
We are so good in languages. We are definitely the best. All right. So next week we will be talking about the city of Christchurch. By the way, if you guys are interested, so that's gonna be quite fun as well. We'll do a complete guide to Christchurch. I have no idea what our background video is going to be. We'll probably take you to Akara because that's the best thing to do.
A nearby drive.
Yeah, Akara is just so fun. I think, yeah, and that's the thing as well. We rarely have the chance to talk about Akara, so I think if I get a chance,
anyway, to shoehorn that in.
Yeah, we'll probably take you like kind of sailing in Akara or something like that. That's really cool. So yeah. You're very welcome, Mark. We're always happy to answer your questions. Keep going with the questions. We have another 10 minutes with you guys, and everybody's really quiet. So go nuts if you have any questions.
If you have any to just slide in there, we can answer them for you quickly.
You see that this person has definitely used the DSLR camera before, by the way. You can definitely tell that this is how you take photos.
I know the photo
DSLR.
Actually that she's taking.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's funny. So yeah. See, I told you there was somebody behind. It's not the arm of the plane.
Yeah.
It's not the backseat of the plane.
Yeah. So, I guess the door is like where the camera is maybe just in
we
front
are on
of
the door. So our camera is literally stuck with a suction cup on the door.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's another row of seat behind us. So yeah, here you go.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, Laura, professional right here.
Oh, we're back up.
Yeah, nice.
That's better feeling.
Yeah, well, we need to prepare Adrian for like the wobbliness of the plane and everything.
It's not always on the side for the entire trip.
Yeah. So I think I'm asking her to take the photo better. Press on here. This is the button you press. Don't just hold it. The amount of people that we give the camera to, like the DSLR, we ask them to take a photo and they don't press on the button. Gobsmacked me. I understand it's something like how we know about, but it's kind of like they don't press on the button, just hold it, and then we end up like, they give us back the cameras like we know they didn't take the photo.
Yeah.
And that happened quite a lot actually. There is God bless his heart. There is a beautiful plane pilot in Tonga that was like very excited about taking photos of us. Like he knew us from the website and everything like that. He was like, "Oh, let me take a photo of you guys in front of the plane and everything." And so, I want a photo of you with my plane and everything. He was like, "Yeah, no problem." And we gave him the camera, and we could tell he was not taking the photo, but he was like so, like proper. We just didn't have the heart to tell him that he didn't take the photo. So we're like, "Oh, thank you so much." And I kind of sometimes have regret about that day. I think I should have taken it, but yeah. Okay, Mark says, I have 2 flight plans, all to Queenstown and then Nelson to Wellington. All to Queenstown. So I'm getting Auckland to Queenstown, I'm guessing. But yeah, I need tips on these airports. We talked about it earlier. So there are 4 of the... I'm assuming you said Auckland to Queenstown. There are 4 of the largest airports in New Zealand, so they usually are the airports where you're going to have the most facilities and services there. If you are the kind of stressed person when taking flights, you may want to look up on the airport's website, the airport map, so you know where to go. As some of them may have odd layouts. I'm thinking especially of the Nelson Airport, which is significantly more like a countryside kind of airport.
It's still quite modern,
yeah.
the Nelson one.
The one thing
yeah.
I'm going to say is that I arrive earlier to the Auckland airport just because they do process quite a lot of flights. So yeah, but when it comes down to like the Nelson airport and the Queenstown airport, you can arrive your 1 hour, 15 minutes earlier, and you'll be good.
Yeah. Cool things to note about the Wellington airport is that they do have a lot of sort of artwork from the
Yeah, that's
Weta
true,
workshop
actually, yeah.
there. So they have like the statues that were used in like Lord of the Rings movies, that sort of thing. So they even have they have like a dragon hanging from the ceiling.
Oh, yeah, do they still have it?
I think
Oh,
so.
they had it
We
last
went
time,
there.
yeah,
We
yeah.
were there like during COVID. And yeah, so Wellington's a cool airport. And it's also quite similar to Nelson in its layout in that it's just a large sort of hall, and then you need to just go sit in the right gate. And there's food options.
Speaking of food options, if you decide to stay, there is an airport, there is an hotel, I think it's a Ridges. There is a hotel right inside the airport, which is
For
very,
Wellington,
yeah, for
yeah.
Wellington, which is very, very convenient. So if you want to make your life easier, you know what I mean, you can literally stay in that hotel. But they do the worst breakfast in the world. Just putting it out there, most expensive and worst breakfast in the world. So if you do stay with them, just have your breakfast within the different food options of the airport, not at the hotel.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I do not remember seeing any food options at the Nelson airport. There are food options.
I think there was a small cafe.
There probably is, yeah. They have had a good They've had a good refurbishment
Yeah.
actually since I last went there. But yeah, Nelson's an easy airport to navigate. Queenstown is very easy to navigate as well, and they have like sort of souvenir shops and things like that as well, because it is an international airport as well, Queenstown. So
it's also one of the hardest, most tricky airport to land on, according to pilots there, because there is strong wind and short runway.
Short
and all
runway,
that.
yeah.
So pilots always find it like quite the challenge to land there. So if that can help reassuring you, all right, here the landing may be gnarly. So prepare yourself for some movement.
I do believe there is free Wi-Fi at all those airports, so you can check that. You can look that up when you get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a few tips for you there.
It's a very generic question, my friend. So
Yeah.
we do what we can right here.
Yeah, so, but I think the best tip, that Robin gave with the Auckland airport is that one's going to be the busiest. So just getting yourself, like making sure that you are there about an hour before your domestic flight is a good idea.
And if you take any public transportation or even your own transportation, make sure you head for the domestic airport, as they're two very different buildings, about 20-minute walk from each other.
Yeah.
15, 20, depending on
With
fit
bags.
you are. Yeah, depending on fit you are, right? There is a shuttle to go from one to the other, but if you arrive like right on time and at the wrong terminal, it is going to be very gnarly check-in. Just keep that in mind. That's the one thing about the Auckland airports. There is always like some group of people which is like, is that the domestic terminal? Every time we arrive at the international airport, we see groups looking for the domestic terminal at the international terminal.
Yeah.
Every single of the time. There is a lot of signs. I don't know what else can the airport do. Like, I don't know if it's really the fault of the airport, but there is.
Yeah, and transport services tend to be quite good. If you're taking any shuttles, they will always ask you, are you going to the domestic terminal or the international terminal?
Tell me more about the domestic turtle.
So yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to navigate yourself to the correct terminal, but just make sure you do go to the right terminal.
Technically, all turtles are very domestic since they carry their home on the back. So here you go. Adrian says, great movement indeed. The Queenstown landing I have watched on YouTube. Yeah, some of them, well, obviously the one that they put on YouTube are the gnarliest one. Most of the time it's pretty fine. But yeah, it is a fun airport to land in. Like, how much does it cost? You go to like Universal Studio or something like that. It costs you $100, right? You get a free roller coaster ride right here with your flight. That's worth it. That's awesome.
It's not exactly a roller coaster, but
depending on the days, it can be. So yeah, no, it's pretty cool. And you get like all those vibrations all the time. Look on this flight right here that we're taking, right? We're about to land, and you'll see a nice little bump. I was about to say we'd wrap it up, but we're 2 minutes away from or a minute away from landing. We should stay here so you see the big jolt that you get when you land. If I'm correct, otherwise maybe it's not.
It looks like we are heading towards the Earth right now.
Are we landing or are we crashing, Laura? What's happening to us right here?
Well, we're still here to tell the tale, so
Yes.
it can't be all bad.
No, it's all right. Yeah, it's all fine. But yeah, no, you get a fun you get some fun landings in New Zealand. Just because also as a thin narrow island, we do get quite a lot of winds. It's very prevalent in New Zealand, so you sometimes do have some fun stuff. But yeah, no, it looks like we're about to land. So yeah, what about we watch our landing and then we wrap up this live show and we move on to our group call. So our group call is Patreon exclusive. It is happening every week. So yeah, it's fun. You guys should join. It's cheap as well. It's not cheap for us to create this big travel guide for everybody and have a whole studio and be there live all the time. So any little bit help. Oh, we're about to land. We're about to land.
Oh, look.
There you go. You see, that wasn't that bad, Adrian.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
That was
made
nice.
it. Yeah, it was quite smooth actually.
Yeah.
We'll watch some others which are less smooth, I think, than that. Because I'm preparing some of those videos for the next few things we're going to be talking about. There's one of them which is quite cool. It's the ski plane in Mount Cook. Yeah. And that landing is actually quite on the glacier. It's actually quite
Bumpy,
jaunty. Yeah,
is it?
I was really surprised. I did not remember it being that bumpy. So yeah, that was quite cool. All right, so this wraps up our live show. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. We'll be back here next week at the same time to answer all your questions. Bye-bye.
See you next week.
We'll wrap up with Adrian saying nothing like the first round. Bye, everybody.